Welcome back to the deep dive. You know, we've gotten some fascinating listener mail
Yeah.
lately. Like, this short story, Einsi.
Hmm.
It's by a Tamil writer, V.N.Giritharan. And people really seem to be into it online. There's a lot of discussion about what it all means.
Oh, yeah, for sure. It's deceptive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like on the surface,
Yeah.
it seems pretty straightforward, but then you start to think about it,
Yeah.
and there's just all these layers.
Uh-huh. And that's why we're doing a deep dive on this one.
Exactly.
Nice. Let's see what we can unpack together. So to set the scene for anyone who hasn't read yet, this family's moved to Canada.
Right.
New life, new home.
Right.
And they're dealing with all the typical challenges of settling in.
Yeah.
And one of those challenges,
Mice.
mice. Yeah. So now this may seem like just a normal everyday problem, right? Like who hasn't dealt with pests?
Sure.
But the story uses this to explore so much more.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, think about it. The setting is Canada, and Canada has this reputation as this very multicultural place.
Right.
Welcoming to immigrants.
Right.
But this story, I think, kind of complicates that perception a bit, you know?
Hmm.
Like it shows this family, and especially the wife, really struggling to adjust even in this supposedly open environment.
Yeah, that's interesting. It makes you think about how maybe the immigrant experience isn't always
Easy.
easy no matter where you go.
Right. Like, it's not just about the physical place you move to, it's also about
The culture.
the culture,
Or a
exactly.
feeling of belonging.
Yeah. And I think this tension is really captured well,
Yeah.
with the wife clinging to her familiar language.
Right. She keeps speaking Tamil even after
6 years.
6 years in Canada.
It's like she's holding on to it for dear life,
Mhm.
This uncontaminated, pure Jafta Tamil, like it's something precious.
It's so different from her husband, though, right?
Completely. He's trying to find solutions to the mouse problem.
Right.
And through that, he starts to actually understand the mice in a way
Yeah.
his wife just doesn't.
So it's not really about the mice themselves, then, is it?
No, I don't think so. It's like they represent something more,
Like the challenges of adapting.
or like just otherness in general,
Otherness. Okay.
something outside of their familiar world.
Wow. That's a really good way to put it. I like that. And it makes the story even more relevant today, don't you think?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like, think about it.
Okay.
We're constantly confronted with different cultures, different beliefs, different ways of life,
All the time.
right?
And how do we react to that?
Exactly. Do we try to understand? Or do we just reject
And the
it?
story doesn't give us any easy answers, does it?
Not at all. It just lays out these two perspectives. The wife's resistance to change and the husband's willingness to adapt.
Uh-huh. And it's up to us to figure out what we think.
Yeah, which is what makes it so thought-provoking.
So, okay, let's get into this scene where the husband is watching the mouse.
Yes, this is one of my favorite parts.
He's watching it, trying to get the food, and the story zooms in on all these tiny details. The mouse's paws.
The way it leaps and falls.
Yeah. Uh-huh. And just its pure determination.
It's incredible how Giritharan takes this seemingly insignificant thing,
Right.
a mouse trying to get a crumb.
And he makes it this metaphor for, like, the human spirit.
Yes. It's not about a mouse getting food.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the struggle to overcome obstacles,
Mm-hmm.
to achieve your goals, no matter how small.
It's about resilience.
Absolutely. And notice how the mouse tries all these different things. It climbs the curtain, it leaps from the shelf, it uses its surroundings.
Right. It's not just brute force.
No, it's adaptability.
Yeah.
It's resourcefulness.
Problem solving.
Exactly.
And that ties into the husband's journey as an immigrant, too.
Oh, for sure. He's facing challenges.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to adapt. But like the mouse, he's not giving up. He's finding his own way.
I never thought about it like that, but yeah, you're right. They're both trying to figure things out in their own way.
And it's all done through these descriptions of the mouse's movements. The story makes you slow down.
To pay attention.
Yes, to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Which is such an important message today.
Oh, definitely. When everything's so fast-paced, it's easy to miss the little things.
Right. We just rush through life.
Mice reminds us to just pause, to observe, to appreciate.
So now let's talk about the husband's perspective on the mouse.
Okay.
Because at first he's annoyed, right? Just like his wife.
Yeah.
But as he watches the mouse, he starts to change.
He starts to see it as more than just a pest.
Like a fellow creature.
Yeah. Struggling to survive, just like him.
And that's where empathy comes in, right?
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Is the story saying we should have empathy for everyone?
Well.
Because his wife, she has a point too. Mice can be destructive. They can carry diseases.
True.
So is it about unconditional empathy? Or is it about something more nuanced?
Like finding a balance.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Between recognizing the needs of others and setting healthy boundaries.
Wow. I like that. That's a really good point.
And it all comes from this tiny mouse trying to get some food.
This is fascinating. I feel like we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, we are. There's so much more to talk about, especially about the wife character.
Yeah. Let's dig into that in part 2 of our deep dive into mice.
I can't wait.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So we were just talking about how the wife in mice really adds this whole other layer.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
She's a fascinating character.
Yeah. Like she's clearly holding on to her Tamil language and
You
traditions.
met her all these years in Canada.
Right. It's almost like she's resisting change even though she's in this new environment.
Yeah. And it's not just about the language. It's her whole reaction to the mice, too.
Yeah.
You know, she sees them as this nuisance.
A threat.
Right. Like they're messing up her home. They don't belong.
Which is so different from the husband's perspective.
Totally. He's starting to empathize with them.
Do you think there's a connection there? Like between her resistance to adapting to Canada and her inability to see the mice as anything other than pests?
That's a good question.
Hmm.
I think there might be, you know. She wants to keep her Tamil uncontaminated, right? And it's almost like she wants her home to be uncontaminated, too.
Like pure.
Yeah, exactly. Free from these intruders.
So it's not just about the mice then. It's about
Belonging.
Yeah, like where she fits in.
Exactly. In this new country, in this new culture.
Wow. That's deep. It makes you think about the whole immigrant experience, doesn't it?
It does. Like, how much do you have to change to fit in? Can you keep your own identity?
And the story doesn't really give us an answer.
No. It just shows us both sides.
Makes you think.
It does. Okay,
Yeah.
There's this one part I wanted to talk about where the husband is thinking about his wife wanting to get rid of the mice.
Okay.
And he thinks, oh, my foolish woman, don't these mice have their family, kids, and such other relationships? Just like us.
That's such a key line.
It is. Because it shows how differently they see things.
Oh.
You know, he's starting to see the mice as beings with families and lives.
And she just sees them as pests.
Right. Like she's completely missing their whole other side.
Do you think he's being condescending, though, when he calls her foolish?
I don't know. It's interesting, isn't it? So some people might read it that way. But I kind of see it as him just being frustrated.
Like he wants her to understand.
Yeah, exactly. He wants her to see things from his perspective.
But she's not having it.
Nope. They're just stuck in their own ways.
And the story doesn't tell us who's right.
Which is what I love about it.
Yeah.
It makes you question your own assumptions.
It's like it's holding up a mirror.
Yeah. To our own biases.
Okay, so something else I noticed was that the story never actually says if the mouse reaches the food.
You're right. It just kind of leaves it hanging.
Like, we don't know if it succeeds or not.
It's open to interpretation.
Which is interesting because it kind of reflects the immigrant experience, too.
Well, so?
Well, like, success isn't guaranteed. You might work really hard and still not achieve your goals.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
It's like the story saying it's not always about the destination. It's about the journey.
Exactly. And that resonates with the husband, too. You know, he's trying to adapt to this new life.
We don't know if he'll be successful.
Right. It's the trying that matters.
And that brings us back to observation. You know, the husband takes the time to really see the mouse.
To watch it struggle.
And through that, he learns something about himself, about resilience.
That's pretty powerful.
It is. It's like the smallest things can teach us the biggest lessons.
But let's talk about how the story actually ends, because even though the mouse doesn't reach the food...
The husband seems to find peace in watching it.
Yeah.
You know? Like, he admires its determination.
It's like he's learned something from the mouse.
Yeah, about never giving up.
It's a hopeful ending, in a way.
It is. It suggests that even when things are tough, there's beauty in the trying.
And in observing.
Absolutely. And really seeing the world around us.
This conversation is amazing. I feel like there's still so much more we could
Oh,
unpack.
definitely. We've only scratched the surface.
We've talked about the wife's resistance, the husband's empathy, the mouse as a symbol. But there's still more to explore.
Like the setting, the role of language.
Exactly. And we'll get into all of that in part 3 of our deep dive. You know what I'm really struck by? It's how Micey uses such simple imagery to explore these really big ideas.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's like the story itself is this quiet observer, just watching these characters.
Right. And speaking of observation, let's talk about Canada as the setting.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely more than just a backdrop.
Right. We talked about this a bit before, but I'm curious to go deeper.
Okay.
So Canada is supposed to be this multicultural haven, right? Welcoming to immigrants. But does the story challenge that idea at all?
I think it does, in a subtle way. Like it
Right.
shows how hard it can be to adjust to a new culture.
Even in a place that's known for being inclusive.
Exactly. Think about the wife.
Yeah.
She's holding on to her language, her customs.
Right.
It suggests that integration isn't always easy, even when everyone's trying to be welcoming.
It's like the story saying, hey, even in an open society, there are still barriers.
Yeah, you still have to find your place.
Figure out where you belong.
And that can be really tough. Well, absolutely. It's both internal and external. You know, the wife's struggling with her own identity.
Uh-huh.
And then she's also dealing with these mice, these creatures that represent something outside her comfort zone.
So the mice are almost like a symbol of the otherness that the family encountered.
Exactly. And their reactions to the mice show us how they deal with that otherness. The wife wants to get rid of them.
Control them.
Right. Keep things the way she's used to.
Yeah.
But the husband, he develops this respect for them.
For their determination.
Yeah, like he sees their will to survive, and he admires it.
It's like the story is asking us how we respond to things that are unfamiliar.
Right. Do we embrace them, try to understand them, or do we just reject them?
It's like a big question.
It is.
Yeah.
And the story doesn't give us an easy answer. It makes us think about our own biases.
So let's talk about language for a minute. The story really emphasizes the wife's insistence on speaking to Mill.
Okay.
It's described as uncontaminated, like she's protecting it.
I think it shows how much she values her culture,
Mm-hmm.
It's her connection to her roots.
Right. But could it also be holding her back?
Maybe. If she's so focused on preserving the past.
She might miss out on the present.
Right. It's like the story is exploring this tension between holding on to your heritage and embracing change.
It's a balance, isn't it?
It is. And I think it's something that a lot of immigrants deal with.
Trying to find that sweet spot.
Yeah, where you can honor your past and still build a new life.
It's a process, for sure. Before we wrap up, I wanted to mention something that's been sticking with me.
What's that?
The story never actually tells us if the mouse gets the food.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's left open-ended.
Right. And I think that's really interesting because it's kind of like the immigrant experience.
Oh, so?
Well, success isn't guaranteed. You know, you can work really hard and still not achieve your goals.
Right. It's not always about the destination.
Exactly. It's about the journey, the struggle, the perseverance.
And I think that's what MICE is all about.
It's about embracing the uncertainty of life.
Finding meaning in the striding,
Yeah.
even when you don't know the outcome.
So well said. This whole conversation has been amazing.
It has. We've covered so much.
From the symbolism of the mouse to the immigrant experience to the power of observation.
And empathy.
Yes. And I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Lake CE is a story that keeps on giving.
We want to hear from you. What did you think of our deep dive? What resonated with you?
Head over to our website or social media and share your thoughts.
We'd love to keep this conversation going. Until next time, keep exploring and keep diving deep.
And remember, sometimes the smallest creatures can teach us the biggest lessons.
Beautiful. See you next time for another fascinating deep dive.